I was listening out there a minute ago. Did Vince really say he was born in 1996?
Yes!
Oh my goodness. I was describing one of the papers today as looking like an older version of Francois Hollande, which was cruel. But that was almost as cruel. But thank you ever so much for that introduction for yourself and Social. Second thing I want to say, thank you all for coming here today. We all know socialism takes up a lot of evenings, but I didn't sign up for Sunday afternoons, especially in the sunshine, and neither did all of you, so I'm incredibly grateful for you all coming. What I'm going to do today, because I don't think we've got a huge amount of time for this meeting, and truthfully, as somebody said to me in a meeting yesterday in North London, when you stood for the leadership, I thought, who is this bloke? I've never heard of him, and he's a cheeky bugger and trying to be the leader of the Labour Party. So I'm going to try and tell you a bit about me and about why I'm trying to do this and about what I feel about our party and the country. And I'll try and do it as pithily as I can. So I am 46, I hate to say, and I'm someone who grew up in South Wales, in the seat I represent, Pontypridd, in the 1980s. And the reason I'm running in this race more than anything else is because my politics come from that place and from that time. And it was a period in which we had a Tory government for 18 long years. And we saw a Tory government that was determined to undermine that community, to disinvest in the NHS, to undermine social security, to see our trade unions and workers' rights eroded. And it feels to me as though we're back there again. We're back there again with a radical right-wing Tory government that has got an agenda for change in this country. In fact, I think they are almost revolutionary in the extent of the change they want to bring about in Britain. I see, them riding roughshod over our NHS. They've already put a blue pencil through that fundamental line at the beginning of Bevan's health bill that everybody should have a Secretary of State whose duty it is to provide an NHS free at the point of use for every part of the country. That's gone on our watch. We are seeing progressively our education system undermined and eroded in this country. We are seeing social security, as we've understood it for generations, eroded. I mean, did any of us see that awful, risible, frankly, interview that Ian Duncan Smith gave to the Mark programme, as he squeezed out a tear or two for the disabled people that he'd been scapegoating across this country? The reality is, we are seeing, in all sorts of ways, the legacy not just of the last Labour government, but of successive Labour governments being eroded in this country. And what has been so heartbreaking for me is that we, as a Labour opposition, have been weak in trying to oppose this stuff. We've been a second-rate Labour opposition. Not just in the last 9 months, but in truth, I think we've been second-rate for the last 6 years. And I travelled here today, and I looked at this beautiful city arriving here. I went to Exeter earlier on, and I'm filled, wherever I go, with a sense of optimism about Britain. I think we're a great country that has produced fantastic values, and we are an innovative, imaginative, creative, compassionate country that has been a beacon of hope for so many parts of the world. And the Labour movement that we're all part of, that we all love, we've been one of those beacons of hope. We've been an engine for social change and advancement for working people for 116 years. We're the best of British in lots of ways, in my view. But we right now are failing this country. We're failing Britain. This generation of Labour men and women in this room and across this country are failing Britain, because we are failing to speak for Britain. We're failing to speak for those values. We're failing to stand up to a Tory government that is once more proposing to take us backwards in so many ways. And let's not be fooled by Theresa May. I'm worried that in the country right now, not just that we read in the polls that 2 million Labour voters say they would prefer Theresa May to be the Prime Minister of this country than Jeremy Corbyn. Awful though that is, I'm not just worried about that. I'm worried that people across the country are being taken in by them. That they are being persuaded that they've got the interest of Britain at heart. We all saw that big speech he gave, the first speech in which he had the temerity, the lecture, the country and the Labour movement about social inequality in this country, about economic injustice about all of the things that our labour movement has always spoken for. Our words, our voice, our values in their mouths. You know, they are deliberately seeking to usurp and replace us in this country. They are preparing for a Labour Party that is fracturing before their eyes, to be swept aside. And the reason they want to do that is it's not just that they've got an agenda for this country, they've got an agenda to eradicate what we've been about. Now, is anybody surprised that the NHS in Britain is now £2.5 billion in debt? It's deliberate. It's entirely deliberate. They've never believed in it. They don't believe in it because it's a totem of what we believe in. It's an institution that we created that reflects our values, where we pool our risk and share our rewards. It's a universal body, paid for out of public taxation. And it stands for what we believe in. And they will get rid of it. It could be gone. It doesn't have to be in this country. We don't have to have a public health service in the manner in which we've had for a long time. We don't have to have the Sure Start centres we built. We know that because they've got rid of 800 across this country. The social progress, the economic justice that we've spoken for and we've delivered can disappear. And truth be told, so can we. So can we. I went to Manchester a couple of weeks ago to the People's History Museum to remind myself of the great battles we fought and the victories we won. I was walking around there looking at the banners and the various artefacts captured in those glass cases, and it suddenly occurred to me, we could be in one of those cases. The labour movement itself could be an artefact consigned to history, because we've got no God-given right to exist, you know. There is no iron law of politics that says there will be a Labour Party or a Labour movement, or even that there will be a progressive left movement in this country. There are other countries in Europe where we have dwindled as socialists and social democrats, and we are being replaced effectively, both by populists on the right and by conservative parties. You know, so there is no reason that Labour exists. And at the moment, I think we are both failing the country, failing to stand up for our values, failing to speak for what we believe in, and failing, frankly, to offer an alternative. Because the point of the Labour movement is to offer an alternative. And that alternative is about hope. Our core reason for being is to make hope credible rather than despair convincing. And that's never felt more relevant to me. Never felt more relevant. I thought during that awful, awful Brexit campaign, in which the political discourse in this country became uglier than it has been for generations, but in which so many people, I think, felt moved to vote out, having sensed a sense of decline and loss and dislocation, and felt that politics wasn't speaking for them, that Labour wasn't speaking for them, that their communities were declining, that there was just an inevitable slide backwards in terms of the opportunities and the experiences of people in their community. And that's why it was so incredibly powerful, that call to take back control. But again, for me, we were weak. We didn't fight hard enough, in my view, to make big arguments about the European Union. Now, I know this part of the world, people voted out, same as my part of the world. But truth be told, one of the reasons they voted out was that sense of fear and decline, and a sense of uncertainty about both this place's part in the world and Britain's part in the world. And our job, with our values, with what we believe in, with the way in which we've spoken for Britain, for tolerance, for community, for solidarity, for all of those values, for 116 years and more, was to make big arguments about Europe. It was to say, yes, for all of the imperfections of the European Union, we're an internationalist party that believes in collaboration and cooperation and solidarity between peoples in this country and across the world. And in my view, we didn't make that argument. We didn't make it with sufficient vigour and oomph and verve. And the country therefore drifted towards the door on Europe. And in my view, that will make it much more difficult for us as a Labour movement to deliver the advances we want for working people in this country. That's the reality. And that's why we should have fought, in my view, much harder. And Jeremy, I agree with Vince. You know, Jeremy, I think, came in 11 months ago and imbued me with a sense of hope about the future, truth be told. I looked at him and listened to some of the things he was saying in that last contest, and I thought, unlike any of the others, he was actually speaking with a degree of optimism and a degree of inspiration about the sorts of communities and the sorts of society and the sort of more just economy he wanted to build. And I served him, not out of just tribal loyalty to the Labour Party, but because I want that sort of a Labour Party. I want a socialist Labour Party that will be a people's party delivering for people in communities right across this country. But he's let me down, is the truth. He's let us all down by not having what it takes to take us to the next level. You know, as I've said before, he's really strong on slogans, but he's really weak on solutions. He's really strong in identifying some of the challenges. But he's not been able to translate those into the sorts of positive policies that can persuade people once more that they should be putting their faith in the Labour Party.
Well, he stacked out the lower Guildhall. He stacked out downstairs. I've never seen so many people in the Guildhall.
Well, it's great, but
I didn't all support him,
I'll tell you what, there's a bloke called Mick McCarthy, and he once said of us in the 1980s, we need to not mistake mass rallies for a mass movement. When we were packing out halls, when Michael was packing out halls, when others were packing out halls, we lost election after election after election. We've seen what happens in this story. We lose. If we speak to ourselves, if we are introverted, if we fail to appreciate the big picture in the country and speak to it with ambition and, crucially, concrete proposals, not just slogans, then we will lose. We can't afford it. This part of the world can't afford it. I can't afford 18 minutes of a Tory government in my part of the world, let alone another 18 years. And that's the reason I'm standing in this contest, because truthfully, for all the ideas, for all the slogans, for all the rhetoric, Jeremy is failing to connect this Labour Party to the country. We lost respect. We lost respect across the party. We lost respect with the country. We are not trusted on the economy. We are not trusted to run this country. And if we don't start turning that around, we will split our party and we will drift into irrelevance. It would be worse, in my view, than the 1980s. We could see the Labour Party at our lowest ebb, and indeed we could see this party fracture. And I am not prepared to stand by and let that happen. Now, I wasn't part of any coup to do in Jeremy. I didn't resign on the Saturday, nobody ran me, I wasn't part of it. I went to see him on the Sunday and I said, Jeremy, we've got to vote of no confidence in you coming here. You effectively got a split party on your hands right now. We've never been more divided, more fractious and fractured in the Labour Party. What are you going to do about it? And his answer to me and to 5 other people who went to see him, Lisa Nandy, Kate Green, people who are now running my campaign, was to say, I've got a really big mandate. I've got a really big mandate. And then to say, well, fine, let's have a contest. Well, we're having a contest right now. It's not a coup, it's a contest. And it's a massive shock. The choice is really simple. Do we actually want to put our principles into practice, or do we just want to talk about them? There's one thing that I found, well, a lot of things actually, but one of the things that I found utterly infuriating in recent years, and we are so guilty of doing this in the Labour Party, is presenting this as some completely false choice between principles or power. We should never sell out our principles. We should never trade them for power, but we should always seek to translate them into power. Because without it, frankly, we're a waste of time.
Yeah.
Without it, we are just a protest movement, and that isn't enough. It isn't enough for the Labour Party, but crucially, it's not enough for the country, the people we represent. And right now, when you've got a Tory government, once more, that is radical, right-wing, determined to undermine and wipe out that legacy, not just of the last Labour government, but of successive Labour governments, we've got to be strong, and we've got to be ready to make our arguments, to speak for the country, to articulate what we think is wrong in our communities, to stand up for people, not just on Brexit, but on all manner of things. And crucially, we've got to look like the alternative. We've got to be the people who make hope possible. But to do that, we're doing a Q&A in a minute. To do that, we've got to be clear about what we're going to offer. So Jeremy was strong on ideas 11 months ago, and strong on ideas in this contest. But what's he been doing in between? Because frankly, he hasn't talked to me. Right, he's ostensibly keen on issues to do with DWP. I had one meeting with him in 9 months. That is not leadership of the Labour Party. He didn't manage to hold together the coalition of the party, and divided parties lose. Historically, invariably. So what I've done, I think, in the last 2 weeks is put together the sort of programme we should have. We should have a massive Keynesian investment programme in this country. £200 billion worth of investment, borrowing it at the point at which interest rates are lower than they've been for 300 years. Borrowing in order to invest in this community and communities like it across Britain. We should have a proper revolution in workers' rights. How can it be right that 17, 18, 19-year-olds in this country don't know that it's wrong to have 0 hours contract and to have to hold down 2 and 3 jobs? CEOs of big companies quite often operating with massive profits coming from the public sector, earning 300 times what their average earners, average workers are earning. It's wrong. It's fundamentally wrong. And we should be doing something about it. Workers on remuneration committees, reintroducing wage councils, in particular in care and in hospitality and retail, boosting the wages of working people, in particular women in this country. We should be making sure that we've got a proper living wage, not the Tory con job of £7.20, one based on need. £8.25 rising to £10 over a period. We should make sure we end the public sector pay freeze in this country. We should make sure we've got workers on remuneration committees. We've got a repeal of the Trade Union Act. We've got proper workers' rights in every workplace in this country. All of that is, for me, a given that we should be doing it, an absolute given that we should be doing it. And we should go further. We should introduce fair funding across Britain. You know, the regional inequalities in this country, the massive differences that exist in terms of opportunities in some parts of Britain versus others, it's a scandal. It's a scandal in 2016 that some people live 10 years fewer in some parts of the country than others. You travel from my constituency to Westminster, that every 10 miles along the road, you gain an extra year in life expectancy. That is wrong in 2016. Any of these things, to bring about any of these changes, which I don't see as particularly radical, I just see them as necessary, we've got to win! We've got to be in power! And I'm absolutely determined that we will win, because we've never felt so necessary. And that's what's so absolutely frustrating. All of our ideas, socialism in this country has never felt so necessary. Big ideas that deal with a big, long-term, deep-seated problems in our economy is necessary. An industrial strategy, proper investment, thinking about what the jobs of the future are, preparing for our children, building 300,000 houses a year. Why weren't we listening to our councillors? Why weren't we listening to them, the activists in Britain? If we hadn't, we'd have been building hand over fist in the last period of the Labour government, and we didn't. You know, Jeremy was right about that. We should be listening to the grassroots of the Labour Party. We should be more democratic. I'm delighted that we're a mass movement once more. But we've got to turn that into power. We've got to turn it into government. Otherwise, we're just sitting on power. And that, in conclusion, is what I'm about. I am about saying I'm no less a socialist than Jeremy. You know, I will cede to no one my faith in my politics and what I'm about. And I'm sick and tired of people telling me that Jeremy's the only socialist in the village. There's lots of us in this room, and there's lots of us in rooms like this across the country And we shouldn't ever allow that sort of divisive language to divide ourselves from one another. You know, Jo Cox, our colleague who died the other day, you know, so awfully, she left a real legacy to this party. But there's one thing she said that I think is incredibly important for us all to remember. And she said there is far more that unites us than ever divides us in the Labour Party. And that's something we should really well remember at this party. Because I tell you what, we've been fighting like ferrets in a sack. And the only people who benefit from that are the Tories. You know, they will flood into the gaps we leave in this country. You know that, you're in Plymouth. When we're weak, they are strong, and they know it. So we've got to toughen up, frankly, we've got to sort our act out, and we've got to do it quickly. Otherwise, we will have another 18 years of the Tories in power in this country. And if you put your faith in me, if you back me in this contest, then I will do what I've done here today, which is fight for my ideas, what I believe in, every single day. I will be a powerful leader of the opposition. I will take our arguments and I will articulate them across that dispatch box. I won't miss open goals. I will put the ball in the back of the net when the Tories put it in front of us. Every single time, unlike Jeremy. And I will lead us back to power. So I ask for your support. Thank you very much.